A rainbow in a lake will become piscivorous sooner in its life than a rainbow in a river.
I don't tell my secrets of locations, but
What good is this whole show then?
With the exception of maybe low water or spawning migration or whatever, it might live in its general home pool its entire life.
If he's in Germany, that was kosher. But if he's here in the U.S., there's a problem.
Grizzly bear attack media, the unicorn wolf pack, wrestling grizzly bear media.
All right, it's only 1 a.m. in the morning.
All right, let's do it. Welcome to the Gritty Angler Podcast. Co-host today, Brian Cull from the Gritty Bowmen.
Boom, chicka, wow, wow.
And some studs from Western Waters Media, Derek Olthuis and Phil Tuttle. Thanks, guys.
thanks for having us.
You bet.
We're excited.
Brian and I didn't get the memo about the cool sock day.
Look, dude. That's all. Dude,
Like elf socks?
Earth tone, man. Earth tone. You ever heard of that? It's. Does Sitka make anything like that? The answer is no,
They should.
because that is so flat brim fly fishing. It's just ridiculous. No offense out there.
I have flat brim hunting hats too. It's not just a.
Yeah, but you're from Utah, so that's
Okay.
just a
Did you
Utah
guys-
In
anomaly.
Evergreen, they don't wear flat brim.
Apparently. Did you guys coordinate this, or is this just like an everyday thing?
For people listening, these guys have socks on that are just glowing in the dark.
So
Bright.
Derek's are orange and red.
Green, white.
Phil's are Christmas checkered red, green, and white. Looks
kind
like
of elf
elf.
socks.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Yeah, what's ironic is you didn't coordinate this. So that means you guys wear, no offense, but, weird socks all the time. Is that true or false?
True. And my feelings are hurt.
Yeah, Brian. Way to
Dude,
go.
I'm just saying, you sell it, Derek. You sell it. You pull it off. It's nothing to be ashamed of.
From socks on to fishing, we're going to talk fish behavior.
Yeah.
And this is a topic, actually, I'm excited to get into and learn from you guys, because fish, depending on the species, whether it's a rainbow, brown, or whatever, they act really different. But you can get to some fisheries that have 3 or 4 or even more fish species in it. So let's jump into it, guys. Talk different fish species, but also how it varies maybe from small water to bigger water like lakes and reservoirs. So I'll pick one. Phil, what do we want to start with?
Brown trout.
Yes, my favorite. Or I should say my favorite for this year. I really want a big brown this year.
Yeah, can you hook me up with one of those, please?
That opportunity is going to pass you by in 1 month. when I'm in Iceland. But the good thing is there's lots of waters around here that will hold.
Doesn't Prince of
30-inch
Wales
brown.
Island have browns?
No,
Sorry, buddy.
cutties and Dolly Varden and salmon.
Aren't those
You're
the
going
same?
to catch a steelhead. That's going to be cool.
Steelhead?
And it's
Those
going to
the
rock
same.
your world
Why?
because they come hot from the ocean and they pull hard.
Pull like
Mm.
a train.
Crazy, yeah.
That's why we got you an 8-weight rod.
Cool.
So you said browns. I want to learn about brown trout, Phil. And I want to learn how to catch browns like this guy, Derek, catches browns. So what's the name of the fish pond?
I don't know. I don't tell my secrets of locations, but
What good is this whole show then?
we can tell you something about browns.
Okay, I don't need GPS coordinates, but let's talk behavior.
One of the biggest differences in browns is, a lot of people will say that it's one of the tougher of the salmonids to catch.
Especially a trophy.
What's
Yeah.
a salmona?
Salmonid?
Salmonid.
So like fish that are shaped like a trout.
Trout,
Is it like
salmon.
a family?
Yeah.
A fish family?
Salmonidae.
Okay.
I always called it a salmonid, but is that wrong?
Well, most of the fisheries community calls it a salmonid.
It's the whole like trout, salmon, char family.
Yep.
Okay.
You know.
Okay. So just
Maybe they're just a little bit
you could just say,
smarter.
like,
Some people would say
trout like fish.
Trout. Okay, I'll say
Just
that.
dumbing it
next time.
down for the rest of us out there.
Okay. Yep.
It's my job.
Nope.
Trout like fish.
So, of the trout-like fish, brown trout
Are the
are
hardest.
arguably some of the harder to catch, and there's been a lot of speculation as to why that is. I can add to that speculation
Let's hear it.
with the hypothesis and some sound biological research as well to back that up. But brown trout are nocturnal, so they are more nocturnal than a lot of the other trout-like fish. So
And they're not native to the United States or to the Western Hemisphere.
no,
So they're from where?
Europe
Europe?
and Iceland, they're over there.
Okay.
Yep. So
Okay.
yeah, not native. So when you hear your grandpa talking about him catching, a native German brown, that's kind of a
Oxymoron.
yes. Yeah, there's problems there, but browns are.
Native German.
I hear that a lot.
If
I
he's
hear
in
that.
Germany, that was kosher. But if he's here in the U.S., there's a problem.
Yeah.
All right.
And I have to say this right now because it's like one of my biggest pet peeves is the difference between native and wild.
Mm-hmm.
We have fish populations that are native, meaning they've always been here.
Yep.
And then we have populations of fish that are wild, meaning they reproduce on their own every year. They're not sterile. So we have brown trout populations here in Utah that are wild. In fact, most of the brown trout populations in Utah, in the Provo River and the Green River, all of these populations are wild populations of brown, but they are not
Native.
Right. Exactly.
They're kind of invasive. Okay,
right.
so tell me, so they're nocturnal. And so I would imagine that I don't know, being that they're from the entire other side of the world, that they would be quite a bit different from the ones native to here, to the U.S.
Yeah,
area.
I have no idea. I can't really say like why they're nocturnal, more nocturnal than other fish, but there's research that
Let's hear it.
suggests that better eyesight, they have better eyesight.
Okay.
than-
They have more rods and cones in their eyes.
Yep.
Allows them to.
Like a black-tailed deer.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know anything about blacktails, but
Okay.
if you say.
Like a cougar.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
So they eat at night. So like a lot of people don't fish at night, so they don't catch a lot of trophy browns. So
Is that true, Derek?
That is true.
Is that how you catch big fish? You fish at night?
Oh, totally. Yeah, for browns, I mean, that's not true of every species. There is some crossover, but browns in particular are very nocturnal.
So how much night fishing have you done?
Oh, a lot.
insane amounts of
Yeah,
night
a lot.
fishing.
At times, like during the summer, I spend as much time on the water at night as I do in the day. Like I
Wow.
hang out with the family during the day, do all that, and then go fish at night.
Good night, honey. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And you and I talked about this once before, and one of the tips you suggested is it's important to go out during the day and scout out the area you're going to fish at night because of trees and hang-ups and snags in the river, because you don't want to go traipsing in there with the bright flashlight to where you're going to fish, right?
Right.
Exactly.
If you were to rank some of the more well-known fish in terms of how predator-like they are, how piscivorous they are,
Yeah.
in how prone they are to eat fish, browns are like at the top of that list. They would rather eat fish, and with that comes this, they probably eat less too because they're eating bigger items. So you think of like you have a pet python and you feed it a rabbit, it probably won't eat for a long time.
Right.
So the same can be very true for like a brown trout, especially a trophy brown trout. If it swallows a
bird.
12-inch rainbow or a duck or a gopher or something,
And they do eat
it's probably
ducklings.
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
If it's available.
for sure. So then it's not going to eat for a little while. Thus, you are not going to catch it as readily.
So
Yeah.
browns are the most predatory of all the trout-like fish.
I'm not going to say they're the most predatory, but I'm
They're
definitely
among the
going to say
top.
they're right up there.
They're right up there.
Like there's strains of cutthroat, both the Lahontan and the Bear River Bonneville cutthroat, that are very piscivorous as well.
Right.
But browns are definitely extremely, extremely piscivorous. And like Phil was saying, they don't necessarily eat a lot. Like there's studies that suggest that brown trout, as young as a 10-inch brown trout, will become piscivorous and, fish eating. And they pretty much key in on that. And a brown that's maybe 10 inches will eat fish that are 3 inches long. And, they might only eat 1 or 2 of those a day, versus you have a rainbow that's sitting in the stream and they eat a lot more bugs and invertebrates and stuff like, that.
Yeah.
And, if they're eating a size 22 midge, they have to eat 1,000 of those things. So your opportunity goes up to catch that rainbow trout and down to catch the brown, because the brown's eating once, twice a day, if that, depending on the meal size, where a rainbow might be eating 1,000, 2,000 bugs a day.
Yep.
Totally makes sense. That goes right along with Brian made the comment the other day. He's always kind of viewed a big brown trout as the biggest trophy in trout fishing. And so what you guys are saying maybe goes along with that. Catching a big brown might be the hardest of all the trout family to catch.
Yeah, they are hard.
Yep.
So, Derek, when you go out at night, how are you fishing for these?
Well, in general, I know the area, like we just discussed, and I am looking for areas where the fish can hunt. So that means in the day, if I see a shallow little section backwater of a river where maybe there's a bunch of mice running around or there's some minnows in there, that kind of stuff, then I know that at night those fish are going to move out of a secluded location. They're going to come in there to feed on that available food source. So I'm going to target places where a brown trout can locate food. So in a river, in general, if you have a fast, heavy current, your fly is going to be a lot less noticed than it would in a calm backwater section of a river. And so I'm going to target those places that are hunting grounds for a fish where my fly can be noticed.
Right.
And typically shallower, even less than a foot deep. You'd be amazed how many big fish will move, like he said, like out of some, whether it was an undercut bank or out of a big, heavy, deep pool or something. At night, you catch them in the water that you would totally overlook during the day, but they move into that at night.
And they move a lot. I've read telemetry studies that talk about browns moving as much as 4 miles in a night to feed. I wish I could, cite the papers, but 4 miles in a single night.
Smokes.
And they will have home pools. So a brown will come right back within a few millimeters. They've located within a few millimeters, with their telemetry equipment, that a brown will move, hunt, come right back to its home pool, and it might live, with the exception of maybe low water or spawning migration or whatever, it might live in its general home pool its entire life.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is. How long does a brown trout live for?
It's variable. Most, Phil, back me up on this if I say something wrong here, but in general, most trout are going to die around 7 years old is going to be a max lifespan. Mm-hmm. However, when fish, like Dr. Benke in his book, talks about when fish become piscivorous,
meat eating,
fish eating, then they have an exponential growth rate, and it also can prolong their lifespan. So some of these really piscivorous fish are going to live, like 11 plus years, which is rare, but the big fish, the ones that are true trophies, are going to be older fish.
And it also, it totally depends on the species of fish and like the system it's in. Like if it's really cold and they grow really slow, fish can obviously live a lot longer. There's lake trout in, fish lake that are 20, 30 years old.
Going along with what Phil's saying, there's lake trout. That's, like Utah, there's fish that are 20 and 30 years old. There's fish in the Arctic, like in Great Slave and Great Bear Lake up in Canada, that they've documented up to 150 years old.
Yeah.
Of trout?
Of trout, yeah, lake trout.
Lake trout.
And
What?
Yeah.
What? You're blowing my mind.
150 years old. And the thing is, they just have such a short growing season that in order to attain any sort of size, they just have to live long. And if you look at those fish, interesting enough, fins on a trout are much like rings on a tree. Like the more rings that you see, the older that tree is.
Mm-hmm.
Well, on a trout, the larger its fins are, like it's an old fish. So you might see a fish in like Bear Lake or Fish Lake here in Utah that never really attained great size, but it has enormous fins. Like the fins just look silly on it because it's such an old fish living in cold, clean water.
Kind of like old men with big ears.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Ears keep growing.
Yeah.
Yep. Same with fish fins.
Okay, so these brown trout are nocturnal, harder to catch, typically.
Because they're nocturnal, not
Maybe-
as active.
I mean,
maybe
I'm not going
less
to say that that's
frequently.
the only reason. Who knows? Maybe they're smarter. I don't know. But
I just think that browns are like super cool looking. Because
They are
a lot of
pretty.
times they kind of have that hooked mouth,
Mm-hmm.
and then looks kind of prehistoric, and then the coloring is just really cool because of all the rings and the dots and
Love the coloring of browns. Okay, so rainbows differ quite a bit from browns. We kind of touched on it a bit, but Phil, tell us a little bit about rainbow trout, their behavior.
rainbows are stupid. Let's.
dude, that cuts deep. They're like the native fish, and they're man.
And they freak out when you do hook into one.
No, there's different levels of stupid. I mean, not that I don't like them. I'm not saying I don't like them. In fact, rainbows are actually one of my favorite fish to catch. Maybe it is because they're not so smart, and I don't know, who knows, maybe they are smart. The biggest difference is probably notable is that their diet is comprised almost 100% of invertebrates.
Yeah.
Just they're eating zooplankton that's in a water column in a lake. They're eating, bugs mostly, almost exclusively. You're not going to catch as many on like a streamer
Yeah.
as you would. You could be fishing a system that has, rainbows and a more piscivorous trout-like fish, and you're going to catch way more of the other species, not rainbows, because, you'll catch a few. Like I said, they're kind of dumb, and so they'll be like, oh, what is that? I'm going to eat it. But for the most part, they eat bugs.
Yeah, one of the reservoirs I fish a lot. Several times I've had a guy, fishing down the bank a ways from me, guy using power bait, and he's almost exclusively bringing in rainbow trout, where I'm stripping streamers, and I don't catch a single rainbow. It's all cutthroat.
Right.
Hammering the streamers.
Yep. Exactly. There's certain strains of cutthroat that are more piscivorous, and I should say that even rainbows, there's certain strains of rainbows that are more piscivorous than others. But
So if you've got a rainbow out there, and it's eating bugs, does it get as big as other trout-like species?
Usually not.
no.
So a
Yeah.
rainbow doesn't quite get as big as the other ones do. Then how big does a big
They
does a big
can.
rainbow get?
Well, there's all these like complex
Variables.
variables. Like there's a strain of, quote unquote rainbow trout, a steelhead that goes
Yep.
out into the ocean and eats everything and anything, shrimp, squid, fish, whatever, comes back huge. So there's like all these rule breakers, but
Yeah.
generally inland rainbow trout gonna eat, bugs and not gonna get as big. You're right.
Okay.
That's a good point.
And it also depends on like a lake versus a river and the food source. So, for instance, a rainbow in a lake will become piscivorous sooner in its life than a rainbow in a river. And if there's some kind of food source, for instance, Colorado has some rivers with mysis shrimp. Well, mysis shrimp is just such a protein-packed fatty meal for the fish that they become really, really big. But that's the exception. There's a food source that's consistent, that's fatty, that's full of protein, and the fish have it available all day, a lot of the year.
Big.
Yeah, a lot of the year, and they get big. Versus if you took that food source away from them, and left them in the same river, they definitely wouldn't be nearly as big. So there are, like Phil is talking, exceptions to the rule. It's a complex thing.
Okay.
So, Phil, you just mentioned steelhead. What are other strains of rainbow?
Eagle Lake,
Yeah. I mean,
California.
like in Alaska, there's what a lot of people commonly refer to as like leopard rainbows. They just got a lot more spotting, but those are streamer eating big rainbows.
Aggressive rainbows.
Yep. Same thing in that same, or at least a similar strain across the Pacific there in Russia. Those fish just pound mice in the middle of the day. Rainbows, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's just that they're more prone to eat on the surface too.
Yeah.
When compared to like a brown. So, something at night, like a mouse or something, if there's a system that has rainbows, you've got a good chance of catching a rainbow on a mouse.
There's Columbia River red band rainbow trout that are native to as far inland as the far corner of Montana, Idaho, like that whole Columbia system there. So, I mean, there are several different species, and they do have variation, like Phil's talking about. Like, you're probably not going to catch one of these red band rainbows on a mouse like you would a rainbow in Alaska or Kamchatka, just because the food source is so different.
Right. Yeah, for some reason, rainbows are fun to hook into, but they don't excite me a lot for whatever reason.
I think that a lot of that, for like most people, comes from, the most commonly stocked hatchery fish for sure in the West is a rainbow trout.
Yeah.
And we kind of have this, this thing in our heads like, oh, we don't want to go catch a rainbow because that's what everyone's catching on power bait. Like, they're ugly, their fins are wore off from the raceway. A lot of people refer to them as pellet heads, but there are places where there are wild populations of trout. Even here in Utah, we have like little streams where we have wild rainbows, meaning, like I said, not native, but they're reproducing on their own, and they're beautiful. They're an amazing fish, beautiful to catch, fun to catch, and they're great.
So while we're talking rainbows, like you go to any restaurant that serves trout, and typically it's rainbow trout.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that?
They're considered as having good flesh. They have, depending on what they're eating, they'll have really pink flesh, kind of like a salmon. So
right.
And
they'll taste a lot like a salmon. So they're easy to raise in a fish farm because they have strains of rainbows that are disease resistant, so they can raise lots of them and get them big, easy. They do really well in a hatchery setting, and that's they've kind of been engineered that way, and that's why.
Okay. How about cutthroat?
Cutthroat are super variable. Their behaviors are totally going to be differential depending on if it's like a Colorado River cutthroat.
Which subspecies.
And there's 11 or 12 strains of cutties.
Oh man, I don't even have my head
Or
wrapped around.
maybe it's 14. I read it
There's
once.
a lot
There's
because
a
there's a bunch that are extinct.
Yeah. So Brian and I caught some Westslope Cutthroat this weekend up in Montana.
Westies are really cool. They're super opportunistic. Like, they'll eat a streamer, but they're way willing to rise to a dry, or say like a Bear River or a Bonneville cutthroat. They're going to be very, very less willing to come up to a dry fly unless it's a mouse, because they're eating fish. Like, they're eating Bonneville Cisco, they're eating chubs, they are fish eaters, just like a Lahontan, they're eating the Tide chubs or however you say it. And, they're just built to eat meat, versus if you took like a high mountain cutty it might eat a little woolly bugger or something, but it's going to be very much prone to eating bugs because that's what's available to it. And so that's where the behavior difference is going to be. But the cool thing about our cutthroat here in Utah, like the Bonneville cutthroat, is a very, very adaptable fish, and it can withstand huge, huge temperature swings. So, I mean, that fish is going to be such a hardy fish, able to withstand really, really hot water as compared to some of the other species. And I personally think that like the Bear River cutthroat or Bonnevilles, however you want to classify them.
There's a split going on right now. So I guess as an FYI for the listeners, there was just Bonnevilles and Colorados and Yellowstones in Utah. And right now they're splitting Bonnevilles into Bear Rivers and Bonnevilles. That's where he's.
Yeah.
You guys just went and created a whole new strain of fish. Awesome.
Yeah. But man, those fish to me are just as cool as they come, because they eat meat and they crush it. Like when you find a Bonneville that's willing to eat your fly, it eats without hesitation. It's really fun to fish for like a Bonneville that is, on to the streamer bite.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I find myself almost caring about the cutties more just because they are native. That's our native fish or trout species here in the West.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a cool fish. And to know that fish has been here for thousands of years.
Oh, for sure. For me, I kind of geek out over thinking about like what it would have been like to like show up in this area, particularly, right here, like Utah Lake, for example, prior to us just completely messing it up.
Yeah.
And, there's all these old historical accounts of like pioneers, pitchforking 20-pound cutthroats out of the Provo River that were, coming out of Utah Lake to spawn. And that I just totally geek out over thinking, what that would have been like to see that and catch that fish it completely untouched and reaching its full potential. That would have just been unbelievable. And I don't know, that's obviously a pipe dream, but it's cool to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anytime I hike somewhere remote, some high mountain stream or lake where, maybe not too many guys go to. I've hit some of those. I grew up, in Canada, Canadian Rockies, and been to some pretty remote places on horseback and, just throwing, a piece of line tied to a string out there and finding worms and stuff and fish attacking it. And, those fish have maybe seen not too many flies or
if
streamers.
any. Yeah, that generation of, that generation likely had never seen anything,
Yeah. So you guys, let's start with Derek, your favorite species of cutthroat trout, either to fish for or the one that you think is the coolest, prettiest?
Definitely the Bonneville, and that's classifying both the Bonneville and the Bear River cutthroat as a Bonneville. But, I don't know. They're just really, really pretty. Their dimensions are cool. I love that they have teeth on them. Like they have big teeth.
Yeah, my fingers can attest to that.
Yeah. And I love fishing streamers to them. I genuinely love the work that goes into it, but the payoff of seeing, a big cutthroat, like a 26, 27-inch cutthroat come and just light your streamer up.
Yeah.
That's the coolest thing to me. I just love them.
Yeah, they're just dang hard to get a picture of because they don't sit still.
Well, I should preface that as they're my favorite to catch. They are the worst fish in the entire world to try and take a picture of. I hate cutties with all my heart once you've hooked in my net. Yeah.
Really?
Dude, they will not stop flopping.
What about you? Favorite strain of cutty, Phil?
I agree with Derek. For me, it's kind of this local, it's mine type of thing. I know the most about them, and I really enjoy, Bonnevilles and Bear Rivers, but just to be different, because I need to be, I've definitely have like a soft spot for Westies, for Westslope Cutthroat. And some of the trips that we've gone on where, we've fished for, bull trout or, and I think part of it comes with the type of water that I was in. Like the water that they're in is mind blowing. Like the craziest, clearest water with the most insanely colored, clean cobble. I mean, just the craziest, most beautiful streams and rivers you've ever seen.
Yeah.
And then to add like just completely willing, 18 to 20 inch fish, like moving up a water column, like 10 feet in the water column to eat a dry is, I don't know, there's something special about that too. Like that.
Yeah.
They're unbelievable. Like literally like watching a pool, throwing a dry and watching a fish move off the bottom and it just seems like forever. They're just going up and backing up and backpedaling, still swimming up, eat a dry, just so, lackadaisical, just amazing.
All right, last one. I think we have time to talk about tonight. That's a pretty prevalent fish across North America is the brook trout.
One thing that I think is notable that maybe particularly new anglers don't really understand is like brook trout don't reach the sizes that the rest of the trout and char, the sizes that they reach. And so if you're catching like 16 and 18 and 20 inch brook trout, like you're catching awesome.
A good size
brook trout. Yep. So a lot of people don't understand that. So they go somewhere and they catch a 17 inch brookie and they're like, oh, that was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really cool. Like that's a pretty big deal. Like you want to catch a trophy brook trout, aim for 20, you catch a 20 inch brookie, you did it. That's
primarily just genetics. That's just like a deer doesn't get as big of as an elk. And
exactly. When I think of brook trout, I immediately think of high mountain still waters, like high mountain lakes, and I think of structure. If I were to tie a fish to structure, I think of brown trout tying to structure. I think of brook trout tying to structure as well. So if there's, a tree that is tipped over in a high mountain lake, like that is where the brook trout is gonna live. And the next thing that comes to my mind is just leeches, like fishing buggers and leeches is probably one of the best ways to catch brookies.
Brook trout love like upwelling springs.
Yep.
They love structure and weed beds. Like some guys call them swamp donkeys, because even really shallow, swampy, mossy lakes will sometimes hold like the biggest brook trout. And generally speaking, they're really cold, clean water because they're coming from like a spring. That water's coming from a spring, but they love sitting in that muck and stuff, like in the really heavy moss stuff, and eating leeches
and sediment too. Like, I mean, the bottoms of these lakes are obviously not going to be like clean cobble. There's a lot of mud, straight up mud and sediment in the bottom of these lakes, and they hold a lot of that type of invertebrate leeches and then worms and chironomids and that sort of thing. So
their flesh, it's pinky meat too, right? Good to eat, or is it more white?
It seems like it's a little more white, but it's hard to beat a high mountain brook trout that's fresh out of cold water. They taste amazing.
Yeah, and it goes back to like what the fish is eating. Like if there's scuds present in the lake, that's one thing that guys tie the red meat to. So like the little freshwater shrimp, because when they die, they have a protein in it that turns like an orangish pinky color. And so, they think that contributes to the pink meat. So when you get a brook trout that has really pink or orange meat, to me, that's the best fish. Like I would way rather eat a brook trout just because the flesh is so good, like even over a salmon a lot of times. And B, because brook trout have a tendency to overpopulate, because their lifespan is shorter. Like brook trout are typically going to mature sexually a lot sooner, and they're going to have a shorter, like 3 to 5 year lifespan as compared to some of the other fish. But they have a tendency, because they mature early, to overpopulate. And so by pulling out some of the brook trout, like a 12-inch brook trout is a prime, like eating brook trout, you can actually help maintain some of the populations in these lakes, because when a brook trout overpopulates, the lake becomes very cyclical. And so you're going to get like a huge spike in numbers, and then you're going to maybe get a winter kill, and it's going to kill the majority of the fish. And there's only going to be a few fish left. Then they get really big, but then they're going to quickly overpopulate. So in like 5, 6, 7 years, that lake is going to be back to where it's just small, stunted fish. So by, if you're going to keep a trout, to me, that's the one to keep.
Yeah, last summer I took my son up to a high mountain lake, some streams. We'd camped there for a few nights. We took fly rods and we killed it on ant patterns. Just chucking ants out into these streams, and 5, 6 brookies would attack it all at the same time. Mm-hmm. We must have caught, I lost count after 50 fish. We kept some and ate them, but they had massive heads and teeny little bodies.
Yep.
And to your point, Derek, I mean, that fishery was just way overpopulated. And obviously there wasn't enough food to support the population. But super pretty fish.
Yeah, that's one thing that we didn't mention earlier. Like a fall colored up brook trout is just unbelievable. The colors,
it looks like a fake fish.
I know, it's like photoshopped, right?
Yeah.
Like someone
painted it.
Yeah, that's like impossible. Well,
I'm the biggest sucker for all species of char. Like I just have the deepest affinity for char because of the places they live. And, like in general, be that a Dolly Varden, an Arctic char, a lake trout, a brook trout,
a bull trout.
A bull trout, they live in really clean, crystal clear water in remote places. But the coloration on those fish, particularly the brook trout, the Arctic char, and the Dolly Varden, and to some extent the bull trout, is just unbelievable. Like it's mind blowing to me. Like every time I look at one of those fish, I'm just in awe of how beautiful they are.
Of all the trout-like species?
Of all the trout-like species.
So would you say that char are the most beautiful of all of them?
In my opinion, yes.
Yeah, I would agree that. I mean, totally in the eye of the beholder. You can
for you guys.
For us, I think that there's fish that are really beautiful because they have like just crazy spotting, and for some people that does it.
Yeah.
But like the diversity of colors, like in a brook trout, like the greens, the purples, the blues, it has the whole package of like. There's literally every color of the rainbow in a brook trout that's in full spawn coloration, including white, which is, and black.
Weird, yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's crazy.
So Derek, what do you think is the prettiest fish you've ever caught?
Either a brook trout or a Dolly Varden. Like the Dolly Varden, to me, were just like a supersized brook trout, and the coloration on them was almost unearthly. I mean, I know a lot of guys truly dislike or look down upon Dolly Varden because they're thought of as kind of like a trash species almost in some parts of Alaska and Canada.
Why?
Because in southern Alaska, they're common. They're aggressive, so they'll steal, if a guy's fishing for a rainbow, they're going to come in and steal that egg pattern or whatever. And, they just, in general, don't get as big. So, if you're on like the Kenai and you're fishing for rainbow trout, you're looking for like a 30+ inch rainbow, where the general size of Dolly Varden was going to be like 16 inches.
And you're just going to catch them all day, and you're just trying to catch that rainbow, but all you're catching is these semi-annoying dollies that are like 16 inches.
But for me, like the larger strain of Dolly Varden that are throughout northern Canada and Alaska are so beautiful, and seeing a fish that's over 30 inches with that coloration on it in the most remote and wild place that you can dream of is just, it's the pinnacle to me.
Yeah, what you just described, I mean, you just have to call it like an Arctic unicorn or something.
I don't know who thought of that.
I don't know.
You know, you're onto something here, Chad. That's like a really clever name.
Why don't we go up there and catch some and title the movie Arctic Unicorns?
I would like that. Gritty Arctic unicorns.
Yeah. That would make it better.
Gritty corns.
If you add gritty to anything, it's just cool.
We're kind of in the process right now of maybe switching up names a little bit with Western Waters Media. And so
because that's a lame name.
Yeah, we've heard several people tell us that that's pretty lame.
Thanks, Brian.
Gritty's way cooler. You could.
Sorry, it's taken though.
We're a little bummed that Gritty's taken, so we're gonna lean towards something like White Wolf, or something super cool.
Yeah.
Like the Unicorn Wolf Pack, or like just something that's over the top rad.
Right. I'm totally with you. With a name like that, people would be drawn to it.
No, dude, when we come out with like Wrestling Grizzly Bear Media or something, okay. Like, yeah.
There, yeah, you're onto something.
So I'm kind of intrigued by the difference between like lake, these trout-like species in lakes versus in rivers. And how are they different?
Philip?
Just give us a quick overview. Maybe run through.
One thing I could mention is, and this is totally speaking generally about our trout-like species, just kind of collectively as a group now, fish in a river and particularly in a stream have to be a lot more opportunistic.
Wait. What's the difference between a river and a stream?
Well, okay, for the purposes of this talk, a stream is really small. I mean,
small
maybe
river.
even you can like jump across it.
Oh, that's tiny.
Okay, yeah, so that's tiny, right?
Yeah.
But in a stream that's that small, for example, fish have to be so opportunistic because there's like not a really big food base within the stream itself. Almost everything that they eat is just stuff that falls in, literally. So terrestrial insects, ants and bees and spiders and beetles and
anything.
And whatever. I mean, sure, there's going to be a few mayfly species that are within the stream, and they'll eat those nymphs. But for the most part, fish in a small stream are eating.
They're freaking starving to death.
They're
so when
hungry.
a meal comes by,
they're going to eat.
They're going to eat.
They're going to eat. And so, speaking generally about, fish behavior in a small stream, they are going to eat. They are going to eat every time with reckless abandon, unless you're fishing for them, and then then you don't.
So Chad and I went fishing. I remember in college, and I had this tiny little fly rod and a little setup where I wanted to go, and I was like, I just want to get a bunch of fish on this little rod, and we drove up to some place in the mountains for some Boy Scout thing.
Yeah, it was here in Utah.
And literally there was a stream about as wide as this couch. Yeah. And it was just going down this mountain. So we go over to that stream, and there were a few deep pools along it. I saw a moose too. But it was pretty cool.
Almost got run over by the moose.
Got run over. He's like from here to Derrick. And the stream was, I don't even know where it was now. It was so long ago, but it was very like desert.
Sure.
On all the sides, and then along the bank of the stream, there was about a 5 to 10 foot wide brush that followed the stream all the way up. So when you step into that brush, it's like you can't see anything, and then it's desert, like on outside of it. So I'm going through the brush trying to bust super thick, trying to get in there to catch to check out. And I heard there were a lot of fish in this little stream, and when I popped through, there was a moose standing there in the water in the freaking desert, except for this. And when it ran away, it ran like up the river and stayed in the thick brush and just went like a freight train through the
scared
trees.
Every single fish in front of you.
But what was odd is it didn't. It didn't run out into the desert like space. It was pretty. It's like a weird place. Can't remember.
So
where it
did you
was, but
catch fish?
anyway.
You're like killing me here, man.
Or did you just
Look,
almost
dude,
die?
gritty podcasts are all about the tangents. Okay.
All right.
So no, I went in there and I after I pooped my pants, no, I took that little dry fly I had and I tossed it in there. Boom, fish. Caught it and I was like, oh, that's cool. Let it go. Throw it in there. Boom. And literally almost every time I dropped that fly in there, I caught like a little 5-inch, 6-inch, 8-inch fish.
Yep.
And it just was like, this is kind of anticlimactic because every time I just caught one, it was like, okay, this isn't even like fishing anymore. It's just like in a barrel. You're just hooking them up. But I can see how what you're describing, like anytime something hits that water, they're just like, I got to eat.
Yep.
And some days, though, that's fun. You just want to...
It was cool.
You just want to catch loads, and especially taking Boy Scouts out there and letting them... Some of them never
And I
caught
took the
fish
world's
before.
tiniest fishing rod, so it made it feel like I had a big one on, you know?
That's the key
So
right there. Just
it
keep
was
it
just like,
relative.
whoa,
You know,
dude, oh.
fish
Yeah.
a 2 or a 3-weight rod on a little stream.
It was fun,
Have it
man.
bend all the
It
way to
was
the
fun
cork.
for about an hour, and then I was like, dude, this is too easy.
Then we put the fishing rod down, and we started catching them with our hands.
Yes.
We'd reach up under the rocks and grab them. And
So I read this. I went to this this survival class by this Indian guy who taught it, and he was like, when you stick your hand under a rock in a bank or a shelf, you know, you can, if you go in real slow, there's usually a fish under there, and if you rub the belly real slow and careful, you can, they'll just kind of relax and get all sleepy, right? And you just kind of move your hand up the fish. And then when you get right up near the gills, you just stick your 2 fingers in there and smash those gills and you rip this fish out. Now, that was years and years ago.
that's not a catch and release tactic.
It was not. And I caught like 4 trout that within the hour that way. Nice fish. I think I passed the statute of limitations there. But
It's like the last remaining population of greenback cutthroat.
Yeah, when did those officially go extinct?
Look, I was really trying to learn these new survival skills,
I like it.
and
Oh, that's cool.
and it was crazy. Like you could literally, I don't encourage people to do this unless you're out starving to death somewhere. But literally, you could just put your hand in there, and Chad was funny. He was like, dude, I can't stick my hand under there. I can't stick my hand where you can't see it, in this dark hole.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Maybe it was Ben.
That's just good life advice.
But I'm
though.
like, I'd stick my hand in there, and it was a little creepy because, there's all this cold, and you're feeling underneath this rock. But you'd feel 2 or 3 fish under there and start touching them with your hands. It was pretty crazy. And they didn't move.
That's cool.
I did that on an elk hunt once, caught a couple fish. I mean, we'd been hunting hard. We stayed out all day, didn't pack enough food, weren't planning to stay out. Came down through this little stream, and I did that very thing. Caught 2 fish, cooked them up, found a nice flat rock, got it real hot, stuck those fish on there, and just fried them up like a frying pan.
That's mountain man stuff.
That is.
It's gritty.
That's gritty. I don't know if you could call that Western Waters media-ish, but it's definitely gritty.
No, but you could probably call it like grizzly bear attack media.
Yeah.
So, which I'm a little unsure of that name, but so on the small stream, we got that. So rivers.
So, as you progress up to lakes, fish, don't have to be so opportunistic. Like, there's a lot more food availability. So as you move towards like a reservoir, fish can literally turn on and off, and that's why fish can be a lot less consistent. Like in a still water, fish can be like super hot one day, one part of the day, and then light
Done.
switch off.
They just have that. They just have so much available to them that they don't have to be.
Well, yeah, and they may be eating like certain times of the day and then be full and digesting, or or a lot of times the reason you stop catching fish in a lake may not be that the fish aren't biting necessarily, but they just literally moved into deeper water to
Yeah.
get out of warmer temps or whatever, you know. So a lot of times guys will be like, oh, the fish aren't biting. You know, fish.
No, they
Fish
just
for
went
the- we
30
give-
feet down.
Yeah, we give fish a lot of credit saying they're really smart when they're not really.
For me, it's, and I'm sure for all of you guys, it's really fun to learn a fish's behavior and then target that fish using your knowledge of its behavior and having the reward of catching it because you knew you had that knowledge. You know, to me, it's way more rewarding to do that than just to go out and throw out some bait or lure or fly at random and catch a fish. You know, it just comes full circle when you understand fish behavior and the little nuances of each individual species. You know, like a brook trout is going to act totally different and eat leeches and stuff down in the muck than like a cutthroat might. You know, they're going to act just different, and knowing that and targeting that and being rewarded is awesome.
Yeah. So when you guys go out, you were talking earlier about heading up north to a certain lake, maybe tomorrow. Are you guys targeting a certain species of fish, or do you just, how do you go about it?
I mean, most of the time we kind of have like an annual calendar, basically preset for like an entire year, and we've like filled in these windows that we're constantly like fine tuning. Like, oh, we can go, like something is happening biologically here between this day and this day, that if we go here, we have a really good chance of catching a big cutthroat, for example.
Okay, so yeah, that was my question.
And so that's how what we base what we're doing on is just our research and past experience. We know like next week, oh, we know we're either going here or here because that's
something's happening in this water.
That's what's going on. Yeah, I mean, whether it's, you know, they're going to be in shallow or they're going to be in this part of the reservoir, lake, or stream. You know, it's just it's all based on fish movement and behavior, and particularly for us, you know, when those big fish are going to be doing that. You know,
guys, this has been a fascinating discussion. I could let it go on, but let's wrap it up. We've been going a while.
Yeah. I appreciate you guys doing this, coming over. And
yeah, let's do it again soon.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Thanks for having us.
All right, everybody, thanks for listening, and stay gritty.
Fellow anglers and outdoorsmen, let me share a quote with you. There is a delight in the hardy life of the open. There are no words that can tell the hidden spirit of the wilderness, that can reveal its mystery, its melancholy, and its charm. The nation behaves well if it treats the natural resources as assets, which it must turn over to the next generation increased and not impaired in value. Conservation means development as much as it does protection. Those wise words are from Theodore Roosevelt. Please remember that our right to fish depends on habitat. Let's be good stewards of our fisheries and fight to protect and preserve our public lands. Thank you for listening to the Gritty Angler Podcast. We appreciate your support and love hearing your feedback. As always, good luck on all of your fishing adventures and stay gritty.